Welcome to another episode on the solar journey. My guest today on the solar journey is a part of the leadership team behind an ambitious plan to establish a 5 gigawatt of solar cell and module making in France. Oliver Schulz-Wittmann, CTO of Holosolis. Hi, Oliver.
Hi, Torsten.
Yeah, you've had a long and varied career in PV photovoltaics, including founding a startup technology company that has had a successful exit. You've worked in R&D for a major manufacturer and also on 2 occasions for the Fraunhofer ISE here in Germany, one of the most well-renowned institutes in this PV space. And along with founding your own PV production consultancy. So you've had a very diverse and interesting journey. So we'll reflect on your first steps on your solar journey in a brief time. But first, let's address what's a pretty hot topic at the moment. That's TOPCon technology. You were a co-founder at TetraSun until it was acquired by First Solar in 2013. In July this year, First Solar announced that it was investigating whether TetraSun patents were being violated by TOPCon manufacturers. What is your take on that move? We all know that First Solar is definitely not producing TOPCon today, right?
Well, I don't have any different information. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
If you look that maybe they go into 4-terminal tandem, maybe the bottom cell would be TOPCon based, which would not be a surprise. So who knows? So I don't have any deeper insights than you have. So sorry for that.
Yeah. At the time, I don't remember it being explicitly said, but TetraSun was deploying TOPCon technology, right? Was it TOPCon?
Well, it's something nowadays you would call TOPCon. So that's true, but I think the technology has been, from a physicist point of view, been around before and maybe had a different name or no name at all. So I think like with naming, it's always a little difficult because, you say one thing, but what it was is a thin passivating oxide and a doped polycrystalline silicon layer on top. So is that TOPCon? Is that Polo? Is that whatever? I don't know. It depends. We didn't call it TOPCon at the time. And I think it predates when the term TOPCon was coined. So yes, but nowadays you would call it TOPCon.
Okay. We'll come back to that later on. What is TOPCon and who invented it? Let's just briefly stay on the IP aspect of solar. There's also rumors, or it's half official, it's official, that Maxion is also in IP discussions. So with First Solar, Maxion, and maybe others, there's apparently Chinese companies are building up a large portfolio now also in Europe and in the US regarding patents. I think perovskites is also an area where many patents have been filed. Oxford PV claims it has a huge portfolio in that sector, and nobody should try to enter that business because they covered it all. So do you think, and I think that's new, that IP becomes a major aspect in solar technology in the industry, because it has not been really an important aspect in the past?
Which is kind of surprising, I think. I mean, if you look at other industries, I think IP is more on the forefront than it was in PV. So maybe it was about time, so that such things happen. But yeah, we will see how it plays out. I think now that also Chinese manufacturers try to enforce the patents they have. So that is maybe the new thing about it. So there have been patent patent maybe lawsuits or at least infringement claims and so on before. I mean, Hanwha, I think, had one on the passivation with the aluminum oxide zinc nitride stack. So that was also, maybe that was the first one.
Maybe that was the first
major.
one, right? And it felt odd back then, right? It felt odd. And now it seems to, the number of cases just starts to rise in a big way, right?
Yeah, it appears that maybe people are not that busy ramping anymore, so they have time to think about how else could we make money, how else could we protect our claim and our market position and these kind of things. But I may not be the best one to answer it. So maybe the ones who make those claims. What definitely I think is interesting is that the patents you're talking about, I mean, maybe not the one from First Solar, not the one from Maxion, but the ones which now are showing up in the news. It's basically LG had filed for it 10 years ago, and 10 years later now, LG has exited the market, but it was sold to some companies. Then it was even like one patent was like resold from one manufacturer to another one, which is used in order to sue the domestic Chinese competitor. So that is definitely new, I think. So let's see how this plays out. But then again, patents are usually really specific. So it may also spur some new ideas on how to do it differently and better. So from that perspective, I think it can always be a source of innovation.
Certainly. What is that patent about, technology-wise? What you just mentioned? What kind of?
I think it's about some specific claims about how to treat the edges in a I would call it like not traditional but common TOPCon structure. So I think but it's what I read from the news. Okay. So I mean it's just these kind of things.
Speaking to Radovan Kopeček from IC Konstanz a few weeks ago, here at the Solar Journey, he reported that the fear of IP infringement is one factor holding back some US manufacturers from deploying TOPCon, and that's possibly one of the reasons why the build out of cell manufacturing capacity is pretty slow. Which was also mentioned by Markus Beck at the latest EU PVSec 2 weeks ago. What do you make of that?
I think it could be. I mean, there's certainly also other things which slow down projects, like unexpended expenses for facilities, waiting for permits, maybe a lack of qualified workforce, or whatever. So I think there's many things. Pinpointing it to someone who's raising claims of patents is maybe as a single source would I think definitely be wrong. Does it add up to the mix of possible reasons? Well, if he has that information, so I'm not engaged in the S, so I don't know. Can't tell for the S.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, these aspects you just mentioned, the availability of land, factories, skilled labor, was also mentioned at the EU PVSec as one of the reasons for the slow growth of cell manufacturing capacity. And another aspect raised was financing, right? So apparently it's difficult to raise private capital for building up the cell manufacturing lines, which require a lot more money than just a simple module line. Before we move on, we always like to step back in time here at the Solar Journey to the early days of your Solar Journey. You studied physics in Hamburg, and then you did a PhD in University of Konstanz, where many solar scientists, engineered, spend their initial phase in their professional career. What was your personal attraction to physics? Why did you choose that course?
So after I left school, so I went for like 15 months to do my civil service, and which was a very regular day. So you were counting, clocking in the morning, and then clocking out in the afternoon, which was actually pretty good time. And then part of my job was to Chernobyl was not that long ago. I think it was 86, and I did my civil service in 94, so only 8 years later. And there was still radioactivity to be found in like playgrounds, in some food and everything. And part of my job was to go get some samples, have it analyzed in laboratories, and see whether you needed to maybe exchange the sand in a certain playground to have it safe for the kids. So I think like this ambition to get rid of the need for nuclear, and that was maybe one driver, and also because like that environment. I mean, there's many ways on where you can do it, but like in these office atmosphere was a little dull. So I thought like, no, I need to go to university to have more freedom. And it was not very specific. So physics is like a very broad field. So there's many things you can look into. I mean, for example, you can try to understand nuclear power a little bit better. You can also try to understand what are the alternatives of energy production. So that's what I found pretty interesting, and that's why I went to study physics afterwards.
Yeah. So that was also already your favorite course in school, or how did you find your interest in physics and natural sciences?
Yes, I really liked it. So yes, sort of like the A levels, if that's what you call in English. So the focus area was natural sciences. So and then put a focus on physics and some math, and so there was sort of like a natural progression from that path.
There's many people now try to push a comeback of nuclear power. So you just mentioned Chernobyl. What do you make of that? Also in the light that they claim that's the ideal way to reduce carbon dioxide emissions.
Well, there's many things against it, I think, and from a very practical perspective, it's not going to be ready in time, and also it's way too expensive, and you generate waste which you have no way of treating it, of no idea of where to store it, and so I think that's all kind of like rules it out on any front. So I don't think it's the way to go, and especially if you have alternatives at hand which are faster, cheaper, environmentally benign. So I wouldn't do it.
You wouldn't do it, yeah. You joined University of Constance and the Fraunhofer ISE in the early phase of your career. So from 2000 to 2008, roughly. And then in that time, solar manufacturing was a very vibrant place, particularly in Germany. What were your experience as a researcher while manufacturing here was so strong?
Well, I mean, when I started, it was people talking about hundreds of megawatts or gigawatts were like sort of nuts, like visionaries, and this may never work. So they had the projection, but not that many people believed in it. Nonetheless, it was, yes, as you said, very vibrant. So you could just go to the lab and as a student to print your cells and to measure them and to cover a lot of things. So it was not that specialized, I think, and it wasn't that many people at the time. So it was really interesting to see how all that is was going. And so I decided during my studies. So I was spending a year at Imperial College in London, and that's where I had the chance to look a little left and right and figured out, oh, PV, that sounds like matching what I really like to do, because it's not necessarily only theoretical, but it's really applied science, and it would offer the chance to follow up on what I said, like, okay, energy production, no need for nuclear, and so that would be a good match. And that's when I, after I returned, so I started doing some installations in Hamburg at a company where, a 50 kilowatt project was like the biggest ever at the time. And so that was pretty interesting. Then I decided, okay, to go to Fraunhofer and study that, do my diploma thesis over there. And then I stayed there. And they offered me to also follow up with a PhD, try to make high efficiency cells, which is, in order to put it, a challenge, do it on multicrystalline silicon, which at the time was like the dominant material, but of inferior quality. And so I spent 3 years investigating that. And we also had projects with BP Solar at the time, Q-Cells as a German manufacturer at the time. So it was also offering a lot of opportunities to interact with people on developing stuff, and not only theoretically, but like really hands-on and measuring it. And that was really good. And my affiliation with Constance was because of, the professor, and I mean, Fraunhofer cannot award PhD, so you needed to have a link to university, and this is how I was linked to University of Constance.
Yeah,
and so that was was a great time.
Yeah. So how much do you think did your early experience in that vibrant industry affect your decision now in a way to take again responsibility for at Holosolis? Why did you make that move? Right? Is it originating in that early phase where you saw, all right, we already had that phase where we had dynamic growth? How did that affect your choice to, in a way, return to a commercial job in the PV industry? Or what's the motivation to that you became CTO of Holosolis?
I think that it's probably been a bit of a journey. So I mean, I spent 8 years at Fraunhofer up to leading the high efficiency group, and then I got married, and that changes your life. And we figured out, okay, do we want to stay in Freiburg or maybe explore some other area of the world? And then we spent a vacation in East Germany, checking out some places on which one would be the nicest, and then figured out, maybe instead of going east, go west. And so I was hired into a startup in California, which was a very interesting experience. So they headhunted me into it, and that's where I was exposed to a very new environment, and it was interesting, and interesting people and interesting setting. So I think, like, with that specific company, it wasn't going that well, but I got to know a couple of people who had experience from the industry. And then I thought, like, okay, this is, I have some qualifications, some ideas. They do, and they have that experience, and let's do something together. And that's when we decided to found TetraSun. So Tetra 4. So I was also doing marketing at the time. So
it was 4 guys.
That's how
yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's how that name came along.
All right.
And I think that was maybe the experience of building up something from scratch and having ideas and being able to push it through if you can. So I think that was like the really great time I had. I mean, we followed through and building a line and selling it to First Solar and everything. So that was sort of like what motivated me to, okay, so here's an opportunity to not to do it again. It's a very different setting and so on. But, now 25 years later, sort of like apply some learnings and, that I've acquired over the years here in this setting and doing it in Europe and doing it on a larger scale. So this is what it's kind of like the outcome of the years before, all of them.
Mm. So when you look back at the early times at Tetrasun, what did you learn about developing an early stage PV technology, and how can you apply that, or how have you applied it then at your later roles and now also at Holosolis?
I think one of the things is you can't control timing. So
what do you mean by that? It's just the time until you have achieved.
Yeah. No, I mean like the market conditions, for example. Mm-hmm. So is it good time, bad time? What are the policy conditions? What is silver price going up and down? So we developed this technology and including copper plating, which at the time seemed like a really brilliant move because silver was getting way too expensive. And yes, but by the time we had accomplished it, which I think having it done after 4 years of having an idea to being able to build a production line for a very new technology is pretty short. However, then in total, there was no need because that scarcity of silver was gone. The printing had improved. So, nonetheless, it may be, the environment changes and your idea is like really good or not. And we were expecting a wave and then wanted to ride that wave, but that wave never came. So like this copper plating technology, we were sort of like the only ones like doing it, and this didn't help to get high throughput tools and get all the from a beta tool to like a really high throughput tool. Mm-hmm. So all these kind of things. But then certain things were really good, like the ability to do it within First Solar. So First Solar made that strategic move to acquire a silicon technology, which usually you wouldn't expect. So you couldn't build your case in order to be bought by the leading thin film company. So things sometimes just happen, and what one can do is be ready when the time comes, and so that you can control, but the timing outside you can't control. Yeah. And then don't try it. So just focus on the things you can do, and when you have something, there's value in it, there will be a way to apply it, to use it, and so don't get distracted from all the noise around you.
Yeah, certainly. You just mentioned copper plating, and there's the Australian company called SunDrive who now drives copper plating. What do you think is the role of that technology in the next years? And does it play a role here at Holosolis?
So I think reducing the amount of silver is a need for two reasons. One is just the sheer amount needed in order to get this technology or this industry to terawatt scale. So we cannot just multiply current use. So getting into and replacing it by copper is like a natural move. Now, is plating the right way to do it? Is a printing technology based on copper? Is it a mix of, there's like silver coated copper particles. There's a low temperature approach. There's a high temperature approach. So probably one of those or another one we haven't really thought of yet is going to come along and do it. And I think it's great to have at least one which is demonstrated that you can do it and that it works. So that's really good. So it may not be optimum if you think about simplicity of the process and applying something on the wafer and then etching it off. That's always it's not the ideal solution if you think about what would be ideal. So that's maybe what's difficult, and things like ghost plating and adhesions and stuff. So it's always been difficult, and depending on whether you have a new approach in order to make it better, I think will make you have a chance to succeed, or maybe then it's just been a very good idea, but not taking over the mainstream market.
Yeah. So First Solar at some point then acquired Tetrasun, and I think in an earlier conference we met, you mentioned you met all the milestones and all was good, and you were setting up a manufacturing line in Malaysia, I think it was. And then First Solar stopped the project, right? What can you tell us about it, right? Because now TOPCon is the mainstream technology, and so it's hard to understand from today's perspective why First Solar stopped it. Can you share us more information?
So First Solar at the time, I think, had like 4 business segments, and they had enough cash to push forward and invest into their technology and business development. And I think they needed to decide, okay, do we spread it and move forward with all the technologies, or do we focus on exactly one thing? This is where we put all our effort. This is where we really want to focus and become the leader. And they decided for the latter. And so they divested of 3 other business units, and that was including us. So, and they decided to go for large area cadmium telluride modules, and really just doing the modules, not the EPC, not the maintenance, and O&M, and not the silicon part. So I think if you look at where they are today, it probably proves them right. So it was, certainly on a personal level, a little sad that, after you've accomplished what you promised and everything was working well, sort of like not being given the ability to drive it to scale. But, they were always pretty open, good strategic thinkers, and trying to help some individuals to find their way. And I have to say, really good, still very good relationship right after and until today. So no, it's good. This is how how life goes, how business goes, and take a decision and then follow through. They are excellent in doing that.
Yeah. What do you think is the secret sauce of First Solar, right? Because it's a kind of a singularity in the PV market. They are basically the only thin film company. They've been doing it for decades now, and they seem to be able to protect their market, right? And it's strange, right? Because 95% of the, I don't know exactly the share, but basically everything is silicon except for First Solar. And it's usually said that silicon is so strong because everybody's working on it, right? And they prove that somehow you can have your own secret and also grow, right? And keep your keep your business profitable. What are your thoughts on that special position that First Solar has in the market?
Well, I think it's amazing for the reasons you just stated, because it's a huge task. If you even have to do the fundamental research on a scientific level, I mean, either do it yourself or fund it especially and just for you. So as compared to the overall drive. They're probably also good in shaping the policies around them. So that's part of being a big company and having the right people and the knowledge on how to do it. And overall, I think it's good if there's not only a single idea out there on how you can do stuff. I think it pushes the silicon technology. Silicon technology pushes them to next level and so on. So I think it's a good thing for both technologies to be around, and especially like these thin film ideas and equipment ideas and analysis, characterization, physics is now probably playing a role again in perovskite, which is also a thin film technology. I mean, it's a different one, different materials, and has its own challenges. So it's really good that it's not only one idea and one technology out there. So very happy to observe that they managed to be successful.
Yeah, certainly. I do want to come back to TOPCon and the origins of it. There's a certain a battle, let's say, discussion going on who invented TOPCon, right? So by many, according to many, it's kind of the throne of Ise, where you worked for quite some time. Then, in a way, I guess, Chetrasan took it to a level hidden by certain patents, maybe, and but then there's others groups which claim their contribution, right? Including Martin Green from Eunice W. Where do you see the truth in this? As someone who has so early and heavily involved in the evolution of the development of the TOPCon technology, or maybe it's not a single place. There wasn't a single place or a specific group or a single individual who invented. Maybe it's just a mix of a mix of different separate invention, which now results in a architecture which is called TOPCon by the world. What are your thoughts on this?
Success has many fathers and mothers, so especially later on, once it's proven to be successful.
Yeah.
It's some people try to put a claim in it, and may others decide on rightfully so or not. But if you look at the origins of having a silicon surface, having a silicon oxide, and a doped polycrystalline silicon compound on top, performing exactly that to reduce carrier combination, yet being conductive. That's been around like in the late 70s, so early 80s.
Outside solar also, you mean? Or
yes, yeah, but yeah. I mean, you look at the band structure. It's published in, I think, paper from Graph 1979, and then the group at Stanford with Dick Swanson and others, they have applied it for concentrated IBC cells, so the small ones for concentration, and found a way to get excellent performance from it. And I think this is also the origin of the nowadays called Maxion patents, right? So then Tetrasan found a way to develop a slightly different structure with a different manufacturing process, which is why it's novel and inventive. And there's others looking at it and coming to another idea on how to do it. But I think the principle behind has been around before, and claiming it just because like an MIS contact is also having a very similar band structure to be the inventor of it is, well, if people think they need to do it, they can do it, and others will judge. I may not be the judge on that.
Okay, yeah. So one thing is inventing something, and the other part is then scaling it up, right? Bringing it into production, into mass production. And I think it's quite amazing how again Chinese manufacturers have made these huge strides in scaling the TOPCon technology. How have these manufacturers been able to develop that technology so quickly and bring it into volume production?
Well, I think it's there was and there still is always a need to innovate, to improve the efficiency. And I think it came at a time when basically the PERC structure was almost optimized out, so no further efficiency improvements on the horizon. And then something else comes along which offers the potential to improve the passivation, which was now called TOPCon technology.
Yeah.
And this together with the trend to gigafabs, which basically resulted in lower cost of ownership. So I think those things came together, and in an oversupply situation, it's often that, I mean, even if you have a very low price tag on a module, if it is of a lower bin, you can't sell it. No matter what the price. So there's a need to really get the highest module bins out, and this was one way to do it, and it was based on semiconductor type and established processing equipment from the industry. So first aluminum BSF, then PERC, then the change to TOPCon with high temperature. And people were just familiar with it. You know how to build the facilities. You know how to operate it. You can build larger furnaces, but you don't have to invent an entirely new one. So I think this all this together made it possible. Plus, the strategic support or drive or push from Chinese government in this case, really pushed it forward and made this to scale. So I think it was sort of like a good timing for the technology to be available. So it was ready when the time was ready, which is, from a technology perspective, like good luck, good luck and time.
Yeah, you mentioned that very early in our conversation, right? That sometimes you need the right externalities to be successful, right? And that in a way you could say TOPCon and the conditions in China were just ripe to bring that technology to volume manufacturing. Yeah, and it wasn't possible earlier, right? Because you didn't have the tech, the scale, etc. Right?
Yeah.
Let's turn to Holosolis. Exciting plans. Holosolis planning to set up 5 gigawatts of cell and module manufacturing, maybe even more, to France. What's the status of the plans? So when are you holding the first cell in your hands with, 25% efficiency or more?
Hopefully more, and hopefully sooner. So, like always, right? So we
What's
have,
in the business plan?
So we've So we've identified the site and we've bought the site. So we know where we are building it. We've submitted the building permits. There's a lot of environmental permits. There's the public debates and all that stuff going on. And that takes a long time. And we've started early, and we are keeping the schedule, and we're getting a lot of good support from the governments and on all levels, from the local, regional, up to national. So that is really, really good support we see. And for European and possibly French levels, it's really going quickly. So that is all good. If everything goes well, maybe in early January or February, we will have the permits, and then in principle you could start building. So then there's the question of getting enough funding in order to do it. So we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in order to do this at a giga scale, which I think is necessary in order to get the economies of scale and in order to make it a useful addition to the reindustrialization of Europe. So that is a hurdle, and depending on how that funding activity plays out, how quickly that goes, we can start sometime next year. Then build module building, build a cell building, equip it, and so on. So I think 2 years from now, that's probably already an optimistic estimate. So something along those lines.
For the 2 years from now, first sell out is an optimistic scenario, you would say. Yeah.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So you just mentioned the aspect of financing. What kind of financing are you looking for? I mean, there will be state support, but you're also, of course, also looking for private funding. Is this? Are you talking to strategic investors? Is it private equity, or I guess it's not VC? I would assume, because it's not really a startup game. Or what kind of money are you hunting these days?
Well, so I think the first important part is to build a business plan that shows how you can be profitable in the long term. So, and that is where regulations also play a role. Where also, yes, the supply chain plays a big role. And so I think all this is in the making. And right now we're not yet raising the funds in order to go for the hundreds of millions of dollars. So we're sort of like in the stage of finalizing all the planning of getting the detailed design of getting the RFQs out for the bidding and so on. So this is where we are right now. And for that, you don't need that much money. I mean, you need money in order to be able to execute on it. But the Series B for actually building the production line. So that is not right now. So this is for later, and this is when also the financial investors, the equities, and the state funding, and hopefully European Union has also funds in order to help you to get started and build the capacity, build the building and equip it for the first time. Yeah. So this is at a later stage.
Yeah. I mentioned that before. So the EU PV-Sec in Vienna just closed almost 2 weeks from today, and the NZIA, so the Net Zero Industry Act for Europe, was a big topic there. Do you think the NZIA will provide the appropriate framework to allow a reshoring of solar manufacturing, or does it require additional measures beyond the Net Zero Industry Act? The reason why I'm asking is because Gunther Erfurt from the ex-CEO of Meyer Burger was on the show only a few days ago, and he basically states that the NZIA will not be enough to allow a competitive business case for European manufacturing. What's your view? What's Holosolis' view on that?
So I think the importance is that it has been voted and it is being implemented right now. Mm-hmm. So now the individual member states have the task in order to put it into national rules and laws and everything. And some are a little faster, some will take a little longer. And I would say, let's see how things play out. So what the rules actually will be and how this will help in order to get to the goal. And I think the goal is 40% of the market made in Europe, modules. And there's some sub rules like, okay, if you do also cells, if you do maybe growing the ingot and doing the wafering. But the overall goal is to get 40% of the market for European made, which also leaves 60% of the market for non-European made. And I think this is where there's a big difference towards like these protective schemes. And generally, I think it's a good approach. I mean, like of a 100 gigawatt market, that's 40 gigawatts, right? So if you were to shut down and say, okay, no more modules coming in. So how are we going to produce 100 gigawatts of wafer cells modules? I mean, that's very difficult to do on the time scale it needs to be done in order to address the needs which we have from an industrial perspective, from a climate change perspective, and so on. So I don't want to call for protective measures right now. I think, let's make a good scheme that puts good incentives, that also allows for future and further collaboration. And, I think we all benefit from the size of the market and the advancements of the industry that have been pushed by China and Chinese manufacturers. And, there's good things on how we can collaborate and on how we can, get a good share of the market. And you also need maybe some protective measures in order to get like a level playing field, in order to be able to compete fairly. But, that is good. And the overall cost of a PV module is not contributing that much anymore to the overall system cost. And I think it's good if it stays that way. So, because this is how overall, this is why PV has become the cheapest source of energy, and this is why it's working, and this is why it is a business in which everyone wants to participate. So do we, and I think this can work and will work, and there's good policies being put in place now, and that from time to time maybe you need to adjust and maybe you need to change things. But right now I would be very optimistic and not ask for another thing before I even know how the first one actually really is and how it's going to work. So, I think we should focus on what we can execute on, and, then we'll be busy doing that.
Again, that mantra, focus on what you can control, right? Very good. So I would assume that for the funding, you would need for France to execute on the NZIA, right? For France, right? So that your investors know exactly the conditions, right? So basically, will need for France to put the rules and laws in place. can this happen within the next 6 months or so? Or what's your expectations? What's the team's expectation?
So we know they're working on it,
Mhm.
and there's the appropriate associations which we also are part of, which help to provide the view of the industry, and maybe also some learnings of the past and how this should shape rules for the future and so on. So I'm not that deeply involved in order to be knowledgeable about a time frame. From an observer's perspective, usually things take longer than you want. That might also be the case here, but I think everyone is working very hard on doing things right and quick, and like with all the permitting and so on, people are working really optimistically in favor in building up something, and I think that's a very good setting. And if we all keep doing that, then we will be faster than doing too much nagging.
Yeah. It seems that Germany now is not planning to do initiate any activities that will help to reshore manufacturing to Germany, right? How damaging is that, in your opinion, to what France is planning? Will that?
Well,
It
at
could.
the latest, you would have realized from my accent that I am German. So
Sure.
it's it's a pity. I think it's a lost opportunity, and that is that's maybe how much I can say. And it certainly would be more helpful if there was more. You mentioned before, like this in the early 2000s, like this atmosphere of let's get it going, and a thriving industry, and who can build up a line faster and get better efficiencies and all that, and getting back to such a atmosphere and setting. It would be very useful if Germany, being such an important player in Europe, would also contribute. So maybe now we have to wait a little longer, see how things change. Yes, it's not helpful if people do not act, but then again, let's be a good example of how it can be done, and maybe then we can be a role model and help this way.
Yeah. So France being the role model then in Europe, in reshoring PV manufacturing to Europe.
Yes, in Italy and Austria and Spain and everyone, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's there's no need to wait, and there's no exclusion of anyone. But I think if you can be successful and show this is a good way how to do it, it will be attractive, and then then people will be eager to contribute and also benefit from it. So I think that would be, rather than banning nuclear, so it's better to provide a better option. So, and then this is going to be adopted, and then you have less fight and less stupid discussions, and then just go for the better solution and for the improvement. This is, I think, more fruitful in the end.
Yeah. One aspect is, of course, financing. We discussed that. The other one is, how do you actually where do you actually get the materials and equipment from? So there's been lots of discussion about the by now lack of the appropriate ecosystem in Europe. How will you handle that situation at Holosolis?
Yeah, I think for wafers, for glass, just the amount it's difficult to get in Europe. So definitely one will have to also source from outside of Europe, could be Southeast Asia, could be China, could be, well, maybe US, I don't know. They might, depending on how things go, they might just consume everything locally. So I think that is a challenge if you look at these raw materials. So there's some activities which are, also depending on companies like us, and there's also other ambitions in other countries, or also in France. We're not the only one. So they also need to see, there's customers, and there's a business plan, and so this is what also pushes them in order to revive a business and invest into a business. And this is not all going to happen overnight, but if we can prove that we can make modules and we have customers buying it, then we can be their customers, and everyone is happy to have customers and have a business. So I think this is the the opposite of a downward spiral. It's just turn it into an upward spiral, that people see how they can make money, have a business, and contribute to the greater good.
Yeah.
So that's I think the idea behind it, and it's going to be humps and bumps along the way. So that's for sure. We've all been around long enough to, that's never been like a steady, smooth growth. It's always up and downs, and right now it's pretty much a down, but it also means the next up is coming.
Yeah. You just mentioned the other projects in Europe, and one of them is Carbon, also a French project, and they well, maybe they decided, but at least they their plan is to integrate wafering, but I think also ingoting to their factory. Why did you choose Holosolis not to include that part in your manufacturing concept?
So we want to focus on, certain parts of the value chain, which we think make good sense. Just making modules is good. Just making cells is good. Making both of it is also good. If we were to do additional things, I would be concerned about losing focus. But it's great if others do other things on the value chain, and so that's all very good. I personally think our choice to focus, and also in conjunction with the site we have, so it's all overall good match. So adding additional things is possibly not the right, or I would judge it as not the right outcome for us. So that's why. But different people have different circumstances, and they come to other optimized solutions for their specific cases, which is, that's good. So it's like, First Solar and other industries, and it's great if not everyone is doing exactly the same.
Yeah, sure. Hey, Oliver. So that was very much on the operational side of things, right? We talked about technology and your plans now to establish manufacturing capacity, which everybody's, at least here in Europe, is very excited about. And I think also the whole world is now watching on how this will play out. When you step back a little, that's my classic final question. What do you think does it take to get solar to the next level beyond, let's say, the small humps and bumps on the operational side?
So what is the next level for you?
It's up to you. What do you see as everybody has as you mentioned, everybody has a different outlook onto the future. What's important, right? To make it more attractive, cheaper, used more widely. Yeah.
I think it is already the cheapest technology. it is readily available. You can combine it with the storage. It provides you energy as electricity, which is a very high and very useful form of energy, compared to heat, where you cannot do that much with it. But from electricity, you can do many things, everything.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, I think PV has already accomplished what it was set out to do some 25 years ago. So I think that is really great. Now, keep spreading it, not having it monopolized, and making it even more available to countries and industries that are hungry for energy. And I mean, this is not only like other areas of the world, but we have lots of industrial processing which requires energy, and you can supply it with electricity, or then turn it from electricity into mechanical force or into heat if that's what you need. And so all that has not really happened yet. So I think this is yet to come, and so the application side. So how to use it, how to store it, how to, maybe like a seasonal storage is maybe one of the challenges. For PV manufacturing, keep spreading it, making us resilient against like the humps and bumps potentially coming from political interferences. So I think this is that would be the task. I think the size is good, the cost point is really good, and the technology is matured. So saving that and getting it steadily across all industries and across the world for everyone who wants to use it. I think that would be the next level, and it's keep pushing forward and showing that this is the best option to go forward. And then you don't need to talk about banning things, and then that is a natural choice within the system because people are eager to do it. And I think if we can keep that going, then it's going to be bright.
Yeah. Excellent. And you doing exactly that, making it worldwide available by building that new fab in France. Oliver, it's been a real pleasure. I appreciate very much that you took the time for coming here onto the solar journey. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thanks for having me.